The new housekeeper stared at the portrait in the mansion with her heart racing, stepped closer in confusion, and asked, "Ma'am, why is the father of my daughter in that portrait?" The silence that followed said more than any answer. "Ma'am, why is the father of my daughter in the portrait in your mansion?" "Hello, it's Uncle Joel. Come along with me to the very end, and I promise you will be delighted, thrilled, and inspired by this amazing story. Enjoy." The bus rattled along the winding contours of Bel Air, an upscale neighborhood in Los Angeles, where mansions seemed to compete with one another in opulence and elegance. Amanda Miller clutched the worn strap of her faux leather purse to her chest, watching through the fogged window the houses she never imagined she'd visit, let alone work in. The growing nervousness in her stomach made the trip even more uncomfortable. "Next stop, Acacia Drive," the driver announced indifferently. Amanda swallowed hard. This was it. She checked again the address scribbled on the crumpled paper in her hands. Albright Estate, number 237. She had answered the job almost out of desperation after the coffee shop where she worked had closed unexpectedly 3 weeks earlier. Her savings were nearly gone, and the bills were piling up on the table of her small apartment in Inglewood. When she stepped off the bus, the humid February heat wrapped around her immediately. Amanda adjusted her improvised bun, trying to look more presentable for the interview. The white blouse, the most formal one she owned, already showed signs of wear at the sleeves, but it was impeccably clean and pressed. Everything needed to work out. Luna Seta depended on it. Luna thinking of her 4-year-old daughter, who at that moment was under the care of the neighbor. Mrs. Zulema brought both strength and anxiety. The little girl with almond-shaped eyes and an easy smile was her reason to get up every morning, to keep fighting when everything seemed to be falling apart. Since discovering the unexpected pregnancy, Amanda had promised herself she would never let her daughter feel unloved, even if she grew up without knowing her father. Him. Amanda shook her head, pushing away the memory of those hazel-green eyes, the smile that tilted more to one side than the other, the way he said her name as if it were poetry. Andrew. He'd said his name was, a common name for someone who, in hindsight, was anything but common. 3 months of dates, conversations until dawn, whispered promises. And then, without warning, he disappeared. When she discovered the pregnancy, it was already too late. The number he'd given her no longer existed. The address, some random street in Santa Monica, turned out to be fake. It was as if Andrew had never existed. As if those nights under the stars on Santa Monica Beach were just an elaborate dream. But Luna was real. Her eyes, a perfect blend of hers and his, were proof enough that Amanda hadn't imagined it all. The shape of her chin, the way she furrowed her brow when concentrating. Small details that sometimes made Amanda stop, caught off guard by the vivid memory of the man who was gone. She stopped before the imposing wrought-iron gate, adorned with the letter A in gold. She took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and pressed the doorbell. A metallic voice answered through the intercom. "Albright Estate, good morning." "Good morning, I'm Amanda Miller. I have an interview scheduled with Mrs. Vanessa Albright for the housekeeper position." The gate slid open silently, revealing a lush garden that looked like something out of a design magazine. Amanda walked along the path of polished stones, trying not to be intimidated by the grandeur of the place. The mansion, in neoclassical style, with its imposing columns and tall windows, seemed to look down on her with disdain. At the main door, a middle-aged woman dressed in a spotless grey uniform waited with a neutral expression. "I'm Regina." "The house manager," she introduced herself briskly. "Mrs. Vanessa is expecting you in the office. Please, follow me." Amanda followed the woman through the mansion's hallways, impressed by the discreet luxury that permeated every detail. Paintings by famous artists adorned the walls, Persian rugs covered the Italian marble floor, arrangements of fresh flowers perfumed the air with a delicate scent of lilies and roses. It was a world completely different from hers. Regina knocked softly on a carved wooden door and opened it after hearing a melodious, "Come in." "Ma'am, the candidate for the position is here," she announced, giving space for Amanda to enter. The office was an elegant room, decorated in navy blue and gold tones. Behind a mahogany desk sat Vanessa Albright, a woman in her early 50s. She lifted her eyes from the documents she was reviewing. Her blonde hair, impeccably arranged in a sophisticated bun, framed a face that, despite the signs of age, maintained a classic beauty. A pearl necklace adorned her neck, complementing the perfectly tailored navy dress. "Amanda Miller?" she asked with a slight smile, indicating the chair in front of her. "Please, have a seat." Amanda obeyed, trying to control the tremor in her hands. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mrs. Albright." "Vanessa, please." "Let's save formalities for occasions that really call for them," the woman replied, surprising Amanda with a less rigid approach than she'd expected. "Regina told me about your references. You worked in coffee shops before." "Yes, Mrs. Vanessa. For almost 5 years at the Belvedere Cafe in Santa Monica, and more recently at Sweet Moment in Inglewood, which unfortunately closed its doors." Vanessa nodded, leafing through the simple resume Amanda had sent days earlier. "And you have a 4-year-old daughter, correct?" "Luna?" "Yes." Amanda couldn't help but smile at the mention of her daughter. "She's my life." "I understand." Vanessa studied her for a moment. "I won't hide that this worries me a little. The work here requires full dedication during the week, with Sundays off. How do you plan to balance that with raising your child?" Amanda had prepared for this question. It was always the same concern in every interview, as if being a single mother were a handicap. "Luna attends the public daycare during the day, and I have a trusted neighbor, Mrs. Zulema, who takes care of her when necessary. I've never missed work because of my daughter, Mrs. Vanessa. In fact, it's for her that I push myself even harder." Something in her answer seemed to touch Vanessa, whose expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I admire your determination, Amanda. I know what it is to raise a child, even if under different circumstances." The interview went on for another 20 minutes. Vanessa asked questions about experience, household skills, availability. Amanda answered everything honestly, trying to show confidence despite her nerves. When the older woman finally set her pen down on the desk, her verdict was surprising. "Well, Amanda, I think we can give it a try. The job includes general house cleaning, helping in the kitchen when necessary, and occasionally handling specific requests when we have guests. The salary is $3,200, with all benefits according to the law, plus a semi-annual bonus depending on performance. Could you start tomorrow?" A wave of relief coursed through Amanda's body. It was almost double what she'd made at the coffee shop. "Yes, of course. Thank you so much for the opportunity." "Great. Regina will show you the house and explain your specific responsibilities. My son, Peter, is traveling on business at the moment, but he returns this week. It's just the two of us living here, besides the staff." "Of course." As she stood to follow Regina on a tour of the property, Amanda felt a genuine curiosity about the family for whom she would work. "What does your son do, if I may ask?" "Peter is the CEO of Albright Enterprises." Vanessa replied with evident pride. "He took over the business after my husband, Albert, passed 5 years ago. An enormous responsibility for someone so young, but he's done extraordinarily well." Regina led Amanda through the mansion's rooms, meticulously explaining each detail of the job. The house, although immense, was kept with impressive organization. There were other employees: Jack, the gardener, Yvonne, the cook, and Carl, the driver and handyman. Amanda would be responsible mainly for cleaning the bedrooms, living room, and office. "This is the main hallway," Regina explained, pointing to a gallery of portraits on the wall. "The Albright family has a tradition of keeping portraits of its members. There is the late Mr. Albert, the founder of the company, and that is the young Mr. Peter, taken before his last international trip." Amanda nodded absently, following the house manager's pointing finger. Her heart stopped, time froze, the air fled her lungs as if she'd been struck. There, framed in fine wood, was the face that had haunted her dreams for 5 years. The same hazel-green eyes, the same asymmetrical smile, the same dark hair carefully combed back, with a few rebellious strands falling over the forehead. It wasn't Andrew. It was Peter Albright, Luna's father. The room began to spin. Amanda felt the blood drain from her face, her legs weakening. Without thinking, the words escaped her lips in a strangled whisper. "Mom, why is the father of my daughter in the portrait in your mansion?" Regina froze, staring at Amanda, eyes wide with disbelief. But another voice answered. Vanessa had approached silently behind them during the tour. "What?" Vanessa's voice was controlled, but her eyes reflected confusion. "This is my son, Peter Albright. He's out of the country on business, but he'll be back this week." "I think you're mistaken, Amanda." But Amanda wasn't mistaken. Every line of that face was engraved in her memory. It was him, the man who had introduced himself as Andrew, who had disappeared without explanation, who had left her pregnant and alone, the man whose features she saw every day in her daughter's face. "No." Amanda shook her head, unable to tear her gaze from the portrait. "I'm not mistaken. I know that face. 5 years ago, I met a man who called himself Andrew. We got involved. When I discovered I was pregnant, he had already vanished without a trace. But it's him, the father of my Luna." Vanessa stared at Amanda for a long moment, her face an unreadable mask. Then, with forced calm, she addressed the house manager. "Regina, leave us, please." When Regina withdrew, Vanessa stepped closer to the portrait, studying it as if seeing it for the first time. "This is absurd," she said at last, but her voice lacked the conviction her words sought to convey. "Peter would never. He never. I can prove it." Amanda took her phone from her purse with trembling hands, opened the gallery, and showed a photo of Luna. "This is my daughter. Look at her eyes, at the shape of her face, at the smile." Vanessa took the phone, and Amanda saw the exact moment realization hit the older woman. Her lips parted in silent shock, and she braced herself against the nearest wall. "This isn't possible," she murmured, but her eyes could not deny the striking resemblance. "Peter never mentioned, he didn't." Her voice failed. "When exactly did you two meet?" 5 years ago, Amanda replied. "In November. We saw each other for 3 months until February, when he simply disappeared. And Luna was born in October of the following year." Vanessa closed her eyes for a moment, as if calculating mentally. 5 years ago. That was when Albert had died. Peter was different, distant. Now I understand why she handed the phone back to Amanda, her eyes suddenly moist. "My granddaughter. All this time." Amanda didn't know what to say. The anger she had nurtured for years against the man who had abandoned her now mixed with the confusion of discovering his true identity. It wasn't just anybody who had fled responsibility. It was a millionaire heir who had chosen to hide who he really was. Why would he lie about his name? She asked, more to herself than to Vanessa. "Peter, he went through a difficult period after his father's death. The pressure to take over the business, the expectations." Vanessa seemed to be searching for excuses, but soon shook her head. "No, there's no justification for this. If what you say is true, and looking at your daughter's photo I have no reason to doubt, then my son has a lot to explain." A heavy silence hung between them. Two women connected by a man who, in different ways, had disappointed them both. Finally, Vanessa squared her shoulders, recovering a bit of her composure. "Peter returns from Shanghai on Friday," she said with renewed firmness. "Until then, I suggest we keep this conversation between us. Regina will certainly comment on what she heard, but I'll handle it. As for the job," she hesitated, "the position is still yours if you still want it." Amanda blinked in surprise. "You still want to hire me after all this?" Vanessa studied Amanda's face for a long moment. "Especially after all this. If what you say is true, and I believe it is, then you are the mother of my granddaughter, a granddaughter I never knew existed." A determined light brightened her eyes. "Peter will have to face the consequences of his actions. And I want to meet my granddaughter." Amanda felt swept along by a current of events beyond her control. Everything she'd planned, all her expectations for that day, had been completely upended in just an hour. She had been just a desperate single mother looking for a job. Now she stood before her daughter's grandmother in a mansion belonging to the family of the man who had abandoned her. "I need to think," she said at last. "This is all too much." "I understand," Vanessa replied with a nod. "But think about it. One way or another, Luna deserves to know her family. her father, irresponsible as he was, and her grandmother. There was an unspoken plea in the older woman's eyes. "Please, come back tomorrow. We can talk more. Set terms." Amanda frowned. "Whatever your decision about the job, I want to establish my relationship with my granddaughter. Formally, legally, if necessary." Amanda looked at the woman before her, trying to understand what was going on behind those calculating eyes that now showed unexpected vulnerability. Was she being manipulated, threatened, or did Vanessa truly just want to know her granddaughter? "I'll come back tomorrow," she finally agreed, "at 9, as we arranged." As she walked out through the gates of the Albright estate, Amanda felt as if she had lived a decade in those few hours. The bus back to Inglewood seemed to carry her between distinct realities, from the opulence of the mansion to her simple yet honest life. And somewhere between those two worlds, a man named Peter Albright, or Andrew as he preferred to present himself, was flying back to the United States, completely unaware of the storm awaiting him. In his pocket, his phone vibrated with a message from Mrs. Zulema. "Luna is asking when you're coming back. She says she wants to show you a drawing she made of the prince from the storybook." Amanda looked at Luna's photo on the screen, and the little girl's eyes, Peter's eyes, seemed to shine with a question never asked but always present. "Who is my father?" For the first time in 5 years, Amanda had an answer, and on Friday, Peter Albright would also have his questions answered. The days that followed passed in a haze of anxiety and uncertainty for Amanda. As promised, she returned to the Albright mansion the next morning and, to her surprise, was greeted by a visibly more subdued but determined Vanessa. The conversation they had that morning changed everything. Vanessa had decided to keep the job offer, but added a proposal Amanda did not expect. She wanted to meet Luna before Peter returned. "I want to understand who my granddaughter is before confronting my son," Vanessa explained, her perfectly manicured hands holding a porcelain teacup so fine the light passed through it. "It will give me perspective to handle the situation." And so, on a Wednesday afternoon, Amanda brought Luna to meet her grandmother. The little girl, with her big, curious eyes and shy smile, captivated Vanessa instantly. For us, Luna, a simplified version of the truth was told. Vanessa was a friend's mother who really wanted to meet her. "She has his way," Vanessa commented as she watched Luna explore the mansion's garden with fascination. That quiet determination, the way she furrows her brow when she's focused. Amanda merely nodded, unable to deny the similarities. During those days, the two women had established a cautious truce, united by Luna's innocent presence. Amanda officially began the job, cleaning bedrooms and helping with household tasks, while Vanessa made discreet arrangements. She arranged documents so Luna could be included on the family's health plan and started a savings account in the girl's name. "It isn't charity," she insisted when Amanda tried to refuse. "It's the least I can do for the lost years and for everything that's to come." Friday arrived with palpable tension in the mansion. Peter Albright would return from Shanghai at 3 p.m., and Amanda felt simultaneously terrified and anxious for the moment. Vanessa had decided not to say anything over the phone, preferring that Peter face the situation in person. "I'll pick him up at the airport, as I always do," Vanessa explained that morning over coffee. "You'll be here when we arrive. I won't mention anything during the drive. Peter is always exhausted after long flights. But as soon as we arrive..." Amanda nodded, heart racing. "I understand. He needs to see you in person," Vanessa continued, "to see the face he tried to forget, to confront his choices." At 5:30, Amanda was nervously organizing the mansion's library when she heard the unmistakable sound of tires on the gravel drive. Her stomach twisted into a knot. 5 years. 5 long years since she had seen the man she'd known as Andrew, who she now knew was Peter Albright. How would she react upon seeing him? Anger, sadness, or worse, and this terrified her more than anything, the old attraction she'd felt. Voices echoed in the entry hall. Amanda closed her eyes, trying to control her breathing. "The trip was productive, but I'm exhausted," said a male voice Amanda recognized instantly, despite the years. The same cadence, the same deep timbre, but now with a tone more mature, more assured. "The Chinese are demanding partners. I just want a hot shower. And Peter," Vanessa's voice cut in. Before that, you need to meet someone. Now, Mom? I'm dead tired, and it's important. The firmness in Vanessa's tone left no room for argument. In the library, please. Amanda straightened her uniform, trying to appear composed as she heard the approaching footsteps. The library door opened and Vanessa entered first, casting an encouraging look at Amanda. And then he walked in. Peter Albright was even more striking than Amanda remembered. At 35, he had acquired a presence the 30-year-old man she had known had only hinted at. Taller than she recalled, or perhaps it was simply the impeccably tailored suit that accentuated his frame. His more angular face now held the features she saw daily in Luna. The expressive eyes, the defined jaw, the mouth that smiled more to one side, but it wasn't smiling now. His eyes widened in shock when he saw her, and the briefcase he was holding slipped from his fingers, papers scattering over the polished wood floor. Amanda. The word came out as a strangled whisper. Hello, Andrew, she replied, emphasizing the false name with a calm she didn't feel. Or should I say, Peter Albright. Peter turned pale, looking from his mother to Amanda, clearly struggling to grasp the situation. What? Why are you here? I work here now, Amanda answered, crossing her arms defensively. I'm your mother's new housekeeper. This can't be real. Peter took a step back, as if wanting to flee the reality confronting him. This must be some kind of setup. It's no setup, Peter, Vanessa interjected, her voice colder than Amanda had ever heard it. Amanda came by chance, responding to the job ad. Imagine her surprise at seeing your portrait on the wall, the man she knew as Andrew, who disappeared without explanation 5 years ago. Peter ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Amanda knew well. It was what he did when he was nervous, when he needed to think. A detail so familiar it made her heart tighten. Mum, I can explain. Explain, Vanessa raised her eyebrows. Explain what exactly? How you lied about your identity to an innocent woman. How you abandoned her without any consideration. Or perhaps you'd like to explain how you never mentioned that you have a daughter. The word daughter struck Peter like a physical blow. He staggered, seeking support on the nearest bookshelf. Daughter? His gaze returned to Amanda, a silent question in his eyes. Luna, Amanda said, taking her phone from her pocket. Your 4-year-old daughter. With trembling fingers, she showed the latest photo of Luna, the little girl beaming, holding up a drawing she had made of the princess from the storybook. The same hazel-green eyes as Peter's, the same asymmetrical smile. Peter took the phone as if it were a bomb about to explode. He stared at the photo for long moments, his face a mixture of conflicting emotions. Shock, denial, fear, and finally, painful recognition. My God, he murmured, finding the nearest armchair and collapsing into it. I didn't know. I never imagined, how could you have known? Amanda's voice trembled now, the pent-up anger of 5 years finally finding release. You disappeared. Andrew, or a Peter, or whoever you are. You changed your number, gave me a fake address. I tried to find you when I discovered the pregnancy. I tried for weeks, I couldn't. Peter seemed to struggle for words. It was a complicated time. My father had just died. The company was in crisis. I wasn't in a place to be honest, to take responsibility. To take responsibility, Amanda completed, tears of frustration threatening to fall. You lied about everything, even your name. A heavy silence settled over the library. Vanessa watched her son with an expression of deep disappointment, while Peter seemed to have aged 10 years in a few minutes. I never thought, he began, then stopped, shaking his head. No, that's not true. I didn't want to think. When I met you, Amanda, I was lost. My father had died unexpectedly, and I was under pressure from all sides to take over the company, to be the perfect son, the perfect heir. Meeting you as Andrew was the only real thing I had in those months, the only time I could be just a normal man. Not Peter Albright of Albright Enterprises. And that justifies lying, disappearing when things got serious. Amanda couldn't believe his audacity. No, Peter admitted, looking into her eyes for the first time. It doesn't justify anything. It was cowardly and irresponsible. I panicked. I realized I was falling in love with you, and I didn't know how to reconcile that with the life I was being forced to take on. So I ran. I thought it would be better for both of us. Better for us. Amanda laughed without humor. I spent the last 5 years fighting to raise your daughter alone, working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, while you lived. This. She gestured around, indicating the surrounding luxury. Peter lowered his head, shame evident in every line of his body. I will never be able to make that up. I will never be able to get those years back. But now that I know... He looked again at Luna's photo, and something softened in his gaze. I want to meet her. I want to be part of her life. If you'll let me, Amanda crossed her arms defensively. And why should I let you? Why should I trust you now? Because despite everything, Vanessa interjected, Luna deserves to know her father, and Peter deserves the chance to correct his mistakes, however grave they are. Peter stood, approaching Amanda carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Amanda. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking for the chance to meet my daughter, to be part of her life from now on, to try to make up, in some way, for my absence. Amanda studied the face of the man before her, the same face she had loved, the same face that had hurt her, now seemingly sincerely remorseful. She thought of Luna, who had so often asked about her father with that innocent, childlike curiosity. This isn't going to be easy, she said at last. You can't just show up in her life as if nothing happened. We need to do this gradually, carefully, and if at any point I feel you're harming Luna, it's over. Understood? Peter nodded, gratitude evident in his eyes. I understand perfectly. I'll do it your way. On your timeline, Vanessa cleared her throat discreetly. Perhaps we should all sit and discuss how to proceed. There are practical issues to consider. She indicated the armchairs around the coffee table. And Peter, I presume you intend to make an official acknowledgement of paternity. Peter looked at his mother, then at Amanda, and nodded firmly. Yes. I want Luna to have my name, my rights, everything that is hers by right. I'm not interested in your money, Amanda hurried to clarify. I never have been. I know, Peter replied softly. It's one of the things I always admired about you. The comment caught her off guard, stirring memories of a simpler time when she believed she was living an honest romance with a man named Andrew. We need to set new terms for your employment, Vanessa continued, as practical as ever. Obviously, it makes no sense to keep the employer-housekeeper relationship now. I still need to work, Amanda insisted. I don't want charity. And we won't offer it, Vanessa assured. But perhaps we can find a role more suited to your skills. I noticed you have a knack for organization. Perhaps something in the Albright Enterprises office. Amanda shook her head. Everything was happening too fast. I need to think. All this is... She gestured, unable to find the words. Of course, Peter interjected, you need time. We all do. An uncomfortable silence hung over the three, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Amanda spoke. I need to pick up Luna from daycare. She gets anxious when I'm late. May I? Peter hesitated. May I come with you? Not to meet her yet, just to see her from a distance, to start to understand. Amanda considered the proposal. Part of her wanted to refuse, keep Luna away from him until she was sure of his intentions. But another part, the part that saw the genuine longing in his eyes, understood that despite everything, he was the father. And as Vanessa had said, Luna deserved to know her family. All right, she finally agreed, but only from a distance. This isn't the moment for introductions. When Amanda and Peter left the mansion side by side for the first time in 5 years, Vanessa Albright watched from the library window. Her thoughts were with the granddaughter she had just met, and with the uncertain future now taking shape for all of them. Albert, she murmured to her late husband's portrait on the wall, our son has a lot to learn about being a man, about being a father. I hope it isn't too late. There is something surreal about sharing the back seat of a Mercedes with the man you spent 5 years trying to forget. Amanda kept her eyes fixed on the window, watching the landscape shift gradually from Bel Air's imposing mansions to the busier streets of central Los Angeles. Beside her, Peter drummed his fingers nervously on his knee, occasionally glancing her way. She looks like you, he said, breaking the tense silence. Amanda turned slightly. Her eyes, and her smile. A hesitant smile tugged at Peter's lips. What is she like? I mean, her personality. The question was simple but complex at the same time. How to sum up Luna in a few words, how to explain her fierce determination, her insatiable curiosity, the way she tilted her head when something intrigued her. She's smart, Amanda finally answered, very observant. Sometimes she seems 40 instead of 4, with the questions she asks. An involuntary smile softened her face. But she's also incredibly stubborn. When she decides something, there's no force in the world that can make her change her mind. Just like her father, Vanessa's comment from the morning she met. Luna echoed in her mind. Has she asked about me? Peter's voice was almost a whisper. Amanda looked at her hands clasped in her lap. She started asking about a year ago, when she noticed other kids had fathers and she didn't. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken guilt. What did you tell her? Peter finally asked. The truth, or part of it at least, that her father had to leave before he knew she existed. Amanda adjusted her purse on her lap, uncomfortable. I never spoke badly about you. I never wanted her to grow up with resentment. Peter closed his eyes for a moment, anguish visible on his face. Thank you for that. I didn't deserve such consideration. The rest of the drive passed in contemplative silence. When the car stopped before the public daycare in Inglewood, the contrast could not have been starker. The luxury vehicle clashed completely with the simple setting, its colorful, partially peeling walls, and the small yard where children played under caregivers' supervision. Wait here, Amanda instructed. I'll get her. You can watch from inside the car, but as we agreed, no introductions today. Peter nodded, his expression tense. I understand. When Amanda entered the daycare yard, several children ran toward her. Luna got in the lead. The girl launched herself into her mother's arms with the explosive energy typical of her 4 years. Mommy, look what I drew today. Luna waved a colored sheet enthusiastically. It's a whale. Ms. Denise said whales are the biggest. The biggest mammals, Amanda completed, lifting her daughter into her arms and adjusting the little backpack on her back. It's beautiful, my love. From inside the car, Peter watched the scene with a mix of fascination and pain. His eyes couldn't stray from the small figure in a blue dress and pigtails, whose animated face was a miniature version of his own. Blended with Amanda's delicate features, reality hit him in full. That was his daughter, his blood, a whole person who existed in the world without him knowing. A lifetime of first steps, first words, first smiles, all lost forever. When Amanda approached the car with Luna, Peter instinctively backed into the far corner of the seat, trying to be less visible. The door opened and he held his breath. Who is that, Mommy? The child's voice was clear, curious. This is a friend of Mommy's, sweetheart. He's giving us a ride today. Luna's. His eyes, Peter realized with a lump in his throat, studied him with that brutal frankness only children possess. Hi, I'm Luna, she announced solemnly. I'm 4, and I draw whales. Peter tried to smile, but his face felt frozen by emotion. Hello, Luna. I'm Peter. It's a pleasure to meet you. Carl, the driver, briefly instructed on the delicacy of the situation, kept his eyes firmly on the road as he drove through the streets of Inglewood, heading to Amanda's small apartment. During the ride, Luna chattered non-stop about her day at daycare, the whales she learned about, and an important debate about which princess was the best. Peter watched, equally enchanted and devastated, realizing the whole universe that had existed without him. When they arrived at the simple building where Amanda lived, a new dilemma presented itself. May I walk you to the door? Peter asked hesitantly. Amanda exchanged a look with Luna, who seemed curious but not apprehensive about the stranger's presence. All right, she agreed, just to the door. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building with no elevator. As they climbed the stairs, Peter discreetly observed the environment. The walls with worn paint, the narrow hallways, the smell of home-cooked food from some apartments. A world completely different from the mansion where he'd grown up. We live here, Luna announced proudly when they reached the door with the number 302. It's small, but Mommy says it's our castle. Peter felt a tightness in his chest. A castle with 2 tiny bedrooms, when his daughter could have grown up in a mansion with every privilege money could buy, he thought. Amanda unlocked the door, hesitating for a moment. I think it's best we say goodbye here, she said softly. Peter nodded, crouching to be at Luna's height. It was a pleasure to meet you, Luna. I hope to see you again soon. The girl studied him with that disconcerting intensity. You have eyes like mine, she observed suddenly. A tense silence fell over the hallway. Peter gave an uncertain look to Amanda, who seemed equally surprised by her daughter's perceptive remark. Yes, that's true, he finally replied, his voice trembling. How observant you are. Mommy says I have princess eyes, Luna continued proudly. Special green eyes. Your mother is right, Peter smiled, fighting emotion. They're very special, just like you. When Amanda closed the apartment door, Peter remained motionless in the hallway for a long moment, feeling simultaneously the luckiest and most miserable man in the world. He had met his daughter, and she was more wonderful than he could ever have imagined. But the chasm between them, created by his own cowardice years earlier, felt insurmountable. The next day, Peter called an emergency meeting with his legal department. In his office, on the top floor of Albright Enterprises building, he received Dr. Matthews, the family attorney for 3 decades. I want to formally acknowledge the paternity of my daughter, he announced without preamble. Luna Miller, 4 years old, and I want to establish a trust and guarantee all her legal rights as my heir. The attorney, accustomed to handling the eccentricities of the wealthy, merely raised his eyebrows discreetly. I understand. And the child's mother, Amanda Miller. We have a complicated history. She isn't seeking financial acknowledgement, but I want to ensure my daughter has everything to which she's entitled, regardless of the relationship between us. Dr. Matthews took meticulous notes. A DNA test will be necessary naturally, just a legal formality. Peter nodded impatiently. Make all the arrangements necessary. And one more thing. I want to buy an adequate apartment for them, something in a safe neighborhood near good schools. Peter, Vanessa's voice interrupted from the office door. She had entered silently during the conversation. May I speak to you for a moment? When the attorney withdrew, Vanessa approached her son's desk, her face a mask of controlled concern. Don't you think you're moving too fast? Amanda made it very clear yesterday that she doesn't want your charity. Peter sighed, running a hand through his hair. That gesture Amanda had immediately recognized. It isn't charity, Mom. It's responsibility. I have 4 years to make up for. Precisely because of that, you must proceed with caution. Vanessa sat in the chair in front of the desk. If you show up with a luxury apartment and bank accounts, you'll only push her away. Amanda has pride. And what do you suggest? Start with trust. Show that you're genuinely interested in your daughter, not just throwing money around to ease your conscience. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. Have you thought about how you'll explain to Luna who you really are, or when? The question hit Peter like a bucket of cold water. In his rush to correct the practical aspects, he hadn't considered the emotional complexity of the situation. I need to talk to Amanda about that, he admitted. Vanessa nodded, satisfied to have made her son reflect. Peter, you can't just show up and claim your place in Luna's life. You have to earn it. Prove you deserve to be her father. Peter gazed at the Los Angeles skyline through the panoramic office window. Below, the city pulsed, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Somewhere in that sea of buildings, his daughter was probably playing, drawing whales, asking questions about the world, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. I need to do this right, he murmured more to himself than to his mother. I can't mess up again. That afternoon, Peter did something he hadn't done in years. Left the office early. In the most well-stocked toy store in the city, he spent nearly an hour perplexed among shelves of dolls, educational games, and stuffed animals. What would a 4-year-old girl like? What would Luna like? May I help you? A saleswoman approached, noticing his lost expression. I'm looking for something for my daughter. The word sounded strange, new in his mouth. She's 4, and she likes whales. He left the store with a blue plush whale the size of a small child, an illustrated book about marine life, and the feeling of being completely unprepared for the challenge ahead. Standing before Amanda's building, awkwardly balancing the gifts in his arms, Peter wondered if he was making another mistake. What if it was too soon? What if Amanda resented the intrusion? Taking courage, he pressed the intercom. Amanda's voice answered. First confused, then cautiously receptive when he identified himself and explained the reason for his visit. Climbing the stairs, Peter rehearsed in his mind what he would say. He wanted to demonstrate seriousness in his intentions without seeming presumptuous. He wanted to build a bridge, not impose his presence, but above all, he needed, to be part of the life of that green-eyed little girl who had already captured his heart with just one brief meeting. Luna's face lit up like a beacon when Peter entered the apartment carrying the huge blue plush whale. The girl's eyes, so much like his, widened in astonishment and joy. "A whale!" she exclaimed, running toward the toy with outstretched arms. "A real whale!" Peter couldn't contain his smile as Luna hugged the gift enthusiastically, practically disappearing in the creature's furry embrace. Behind her, Amanda watched the scene with a complex expression. Surprise, caution, and something that might be read as reluctant gratitude. "I hope I'm not intruding." Peter spoke to Amanda in a low voice while Luna continued her thorough inspection of the new toy. "She mentioned whales yesterday, and I thought—" "It's all right," Amanda interrupted, nervously adjusting the simple blouse she wore, clearly not expecting visitors. The apartment was small but impeccably organized, a modest living room combined with a kitchenette, decorated simply with a few colorful touches clearly meant for Luna. On the walls, children's drawings in inexpensive frames, and on a simple shelf, children's books carefully arranged beside a few used novels. "Look, Mommy, she has buttons for eyes, just like the drawing I made." Luna lifted the whale, showing off the toy's details. Then she turned to Peter with the disconcerting naturalness of children. "How did you know I like whales?" "You told me yesterday, remember?" "In the car," Peter answered cautiously, sitting on the couch after a discreet nod from Amanda. "You paid attention." Luna seemed genuinely impressed, as if the idea of an adult listening closely to what she said were extraordinary. "I brought this too." Peter held out the illustrated book about marine life. "I thought maybe we could read it together, if your mom allows." "Sure," he added quickly, casting a questioning look at Amanda. Amanda hesitated only a second before nodding. "Of course, I'll make some coffee while you two read." The way Luna settled comfortably beside Peter on the couch without any hesitation made his heart clench. There was an innate trust in her, an openness to the world he desperately hoped would never fade, especially when she learned the truth about who he was. "Do you know how to read the big words?" Luna asked, opening the book across her lap. "Mommy always reads the big words to me." "I think I can handle it," Peter replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the rising emotion. The book's pages revealed oceans in vibrant colors, and Peter read each fact about whales, explaining patiently when Luna interrupted with her endless questions. Why do they blow water? How do they sleep without sinking? Do they miss the mommy whale when they grow up? The last question made him choke slightly, but he answered as best he could. From the small kitchen, Amanda watched the scene with conflicting feelings. There was something undeniably sweet in the way Peter devoted himself to answering every one of Luna's questions. How his eyes shone with the same curiosity as their daughter's, but there was also a stab of resentment. He had no right to show up after 5 years and fit into their lives as if it were his natural place. And more unsettling still, there was the memory of the man she'd fallen in love with years ago, the carefree Andrew, who had made her laugh and dream, now overlaid with the image of the executive in an expensive suit sitting on her worn-out couch. "Would you like a snack?" she offered, approaching with a tray, coffee for the adults, and juice with cookies for Luna. "Yes, please." Luna replied enthusiastically without taking her eyes off the book. "Look, Mommy, this whale has a horn." "It's a narwhal," Peter explained gently. "It isn't exactly a horn, it's a tooth that grows very long." "A tooth?" Luna had seemed simultaneously horrified and delighted by the information. Amanda couldn't help a small smile as she handed Peter his coffee. She'll ask about that for the next 3 days at least. Sorry, Peter smiled back, and for a brief moment something of their old chemistry sparked in the air. He accepted the cup, his fingers brushing lightly against hers. Thank you. The moment was interrupted by Luna, who suddenly jumped off the couch, still hugging the whale tightly. I'm going to show her my room. Can she sleep with me, Mommy? Of course, sweetheart. But finish your snack first. While Luna nibbled her cookies, a slightly uncomfortable silence settled between the adults. Peter took a sip of coffee, searching for the right words. She's incredible, he said at last. So smart, so alive. She is, Amanda agreed. Despite everything, we've managed to get by. The despite everything hung in the air like an unspoken accusation. Peter set his cup on the coffee table. Amanda, I know apologizing isn't enough. Nothing will be enough for what I did, or failed to do, in the last 5 years. But I want you to know I'm committed to doing the right thing now. And what would the right thing be, in your opinion? Amanda's voice held a thread of challenge. Peter drew a deep breath. Legally acknowledging Luna as my daughter. Ensuring she has access to everything she needs, education, health, safety, and, more important, being present in her life from now on. And how do you plan to do that? Amanda lowered her voice, making sure Luna couldn't hear. Are you just going to show up one day and announce, "Surprise, I'm your father"? Do you think it will be that simple? No, of course not. Peter ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I know we need to do this carefully. That's why I'm here today, to talk about how to proceed. I want to do it the right way, Amanda, the way that's best for Luna. Before Amanda could respond, Luna came running back into the living room. Come see where Bluey will sleep. Bluey? Peter raised his eyebrows, smiling. It's her name, Luna explained with all the seriousness of her 4 years, as if it were obvious. Come see. Peter looked to Amanda, who nodded silently, granting permission. He followed Luna down the narrow hallway to a small room painted in light green. A child's bed with a starfish-patterned quilt occupied one corner, while a low shelf full of books and simple toys lined another. Drawings of sea creatures, clearly made by Luna herself, decorated the walls. Look, I made a house for her here. Luna proudly pointed to a space she had arranged on the bed, with a small pillow and a piece of blue fabric as a blanket. It's perfect, Peter replied, crouching to be at the girl's level. I think she'll love living here. Luna's eyes met his, and Peter saw himself reflected in them in a way he had never experienced before. It was like looking at a more innocent, purer version of himself. Are you coming back to read more about whales? She asked with the candid honesty of children. The question caught him off guard. He glanced quickly at the doorway, where Amanda stood watching the interaction. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. If your mother allows, I'd love to come back, he replied carefully. Amanda took a step forward. Peter and I need to talk about some things, Luna, grown-up things, but I'm sure he can visit again. The answer seemed to satisfy Luna, who immediately turned her attention back to the whale, showing her other toys in the room. Peter followed Amanda back to the living room, feeling the weight of the conversation ahead. I spoke with my attorney today, he began once they were seated again, about the paternity acknowledgement. Amanda stiffened. Peter, I already said I'm not interested in your money. This isn't just about money, he countered. It's about giving Luna what is hers by right, my name, my support, my presence. And how exactly do you plan to do that without turning her life upside down? She believes her father is someone who left before he knew she existed. Now she'll find out you were here all along, rich and powerful, while we struggled. The words hit Peter like a punch to the gut. It wasn't like that, he muttered, though he knew that, in a way, it had been exactly like that. We need a plan, Amanda continued, softer now, a timeline. First, build a relationship of trust, then gradually introduce the truth. Peter nodded, feeling simultaneously grateful for Amanda's rational approach and ashamed that she, the injured party, was the one thinking of Paco, Luna's well-being above all. How long? He asked. I don't know, Amanda sighed. Children notice more than we think. You saw how she noticed the eyes. It won't be a total surprise to her, not deep down. A thoughtful silence settled between them. From the bedroom doorway they could hear Luna chatting excitedly with her new whale friend. Amanda, Peter finally said, hesitant, I know you refuse money for yourself, but at least let me help with Luna's expenses, school, health, extracurricular activities. Amanda opened her mouth to refuse, then closed it again, considering. For Luna, perhaps it was worth swallowing her pride. We can talk about that, she finally conceded, but nothing ostentatious, nothing that makes her feel different from other kids. Of course, Peter agreed quickly. And about where you live. This place is… He stopped as he saw Amanda's expression harden. I didn't mean to offend. It's a fine apartment, considering the circumstances, but Luna could have a bigger bedroom, maybe a space to play, a school closer by. One step at a time, Peter, Amanda interrupted. First, we'll establish your presence in her life. The rest we can discuss later, Peter agreed, recognizing the wisdom of Amanda's cautious approach. The conversation continued for a while longer, setting boundaries, discussing expectations, trying to build a path to integrate Peter into Luna's life without causing unnecessary trauma. When he finally said goodbye, Peter crouched once more to Luna's height. She insisted on walking him to the door. Thank you for taking such good care of Bluey, he said, his voice slightly unsteady. I promise I'll come back so we can read more about whales. Pinky promise. Luna held out her little finger, her face serious. Peter swallowed hard, linking his finger with hers. Pinky promise, he confirmed, feeling as if he'd just made the most solemn vow of his life. As he descended the stairs of the modest building, Peter felt transformed. Something fundamental had shifted within him, a clarity of purpose he had never experienced before. For the first time in a long time, perhaps the first time in his adult life, his priorities aligned perfectly with his deepest values. Getting into the waiting. Mercedes, he sent a message to his assistant. Cancel all non-essential commitments for the next few days. We have a new priority project. In the next message to Vanessa, he was even more direct. You were right, Mom. I'm doing it the right way, one step at a time. In the weeks that followed, a new routine began to take shape. Peter visited Amanda and Luna's apartment 3 times a week, always bringing books about marine life. Luna's interest in whales had expanded to all sorts of ocean creatures. He kept religiously to the schedules agreed with Amanda and never crossed the boundaries she had set, though his eyes often revealed the desire to do more, to be more present. To Luna, Uncle Peter quickly became a constant figure in her life. She eagerly awaited his visits, her face pressed to the window long before the scheduled time, bouncing with excitement when she finally spotted the elegant car pulling up in front of the building. Amanda watched the evolution of the relationship with conflicting feelings. On one hand, it was undeniable how good it was for Luna to have a male figure present, someone who patiently answered her endless questions and treated her with genuine interest. On the other, each smile exchanged between father and daughter was a painful reminder of the lost years and of the lie still hanging between them. He looks like someone I know, Luna remarked one evening as Amanda tucked her into bed. His eyes are just like mine. Amanda's heart skipped a beat. Are they? Yes, and he smiles like the picture I drew of Daddy. Amanda froze. Months earlier, when Luna had begun asking about her father, Amanda suggested she draw what she imagined he would look like. The drawing hanging above Luna's bed showed a simplified figure with a crooked smile, eerily similar to Peter's asymmetrical smile. Sweetheart, Amanda sat on the edge of the bed, searching for the right words. Remember when we talked about your dad? How he had to go away before he knew you existed? Luna nodded solemnly, and Amanda hesitated. Was it too soon? She and Peter had agreed to wait at least a month before starting to introduce the truth. But Luna was already connecting the dots on her own. What if Uncle Peter knew your dad? Luna's eyes widened. He knows my daddy. Well, they're very close. Amanda chose her words carefully. We'll talk more about it tomorrow, all right? Uncle Peter is coming to visit, and I think we can all talk together. That night, after Luna finally fell asleep, Amanda sent a message to Peter. We need to talk. Luna is asking questions. I think it's time. The reply came almost immediately. I'll be there early tomorrow. We'll do this together. The next morning, Peter arrived with a serious, determined expression. He carried a small, carefully wrapped box. I've been thinking a lot about this, he said as soon as he entered the apartment. Luna was still asleep, giving them a few minutes of privacy. About how to tell her, maybe we can use a story, something she'll understand. Amanda noticed the nervousness in his voice, in his restless gestures. It was reassuring in a way to see that he was as anxious as she was. She's already connecting the dots, Peter. The physical similarities are too obvious. He nodded, swallowing hard. I'm ready for whatever happens. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway announced Luna's arrival, still in pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. Her face lit up when she saw Peter. Uncle Peter, you came early today. Good morning, little whale, he replied, using the affectionate nickname that had naturally emerged between them. I hope you don't mind a morning visit. Not at all. Can we read about sharks today? Bluey Aunt wants to learn about her cousins. Amanda and Peter exchanged nervous looks. Actually, sweetheart, Amanda began, we have something important to talk to you about. How about breakfast first? During the simple meal, bread, fruit, and chocolate milk, Peter could barely take his eyes off Luna. Every gesture, every expression seemed magnified by the awareness of what he was about to reveal. How would she react? Anger, confusion, rejection. The uncertainty consumed him. Finally, with the plates empty before them, the moment came that neither adult could delay any longer. Luna, Amanda began, her voice soft but firm, remember when we talked about your dad? The girl nodded, suddenly attentive. And yesterday you said, Uncle Peter looks like you, didn't you? Another nod, Luna's eyes moving curiously between her mother and Peter. Amanda took a deep breath. That's because Uncle Peter isn't just Mommy's friend. He is. She looked to Peter, giving him space to finish. Luna. Peter leaned forward slightly, his voice trembling with emotion. I'm your dad. The silence that followed seemed infinite. Luna's big green eyes. His eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in confusion. But Mommy said my daddy went away, she said at last in a small voice. And I did, Peter admitted, shame evident in his tone, before I knew you existed. It was a very, very big mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. You didn't know about me? The question was so direct, so honest, it hurt. No, sweetheart. If I had known, Peter swallowed the lump in his throat. If I had known, I would have come back immediately. I would have been here from day one. Luna had processed the information with the logic of a 4-year-old. So you're my daddy for real, not just in the picture. Amanda couldn't help a small smile despite the tension. Yes, sweetheart. He's your real dad. That's why we have the same eyes and the same crooked smile. Luna pointed to her own face, then to Peter's. Exactly, Peter confirmed, marveling at his daughter's perceptiveness. You have my eyes, my smile. You're part of me, Luna. The best part. Luna absorbed the information for a few seconds, then asked with the brutal innocence of children, And now you're going to live with us? The adults exchanged surprised looks. No, sweetheart, Amanda explained gently. Your your dad, has his own house, but he's going to keep visiting, maybe even more now. And you can visit my house too, Peter added quickly, and meet your grandma Vanessa. She's excited to spend more time with you, the elegant lady. Luna remembered the brief meeting with Vanessa, who had discreetly visited the apartment once. Is she my real grandma? Yes, Peter confirmed, grateful for the positive memory Luna had of Vanessa. My mother, your grandmother. A long moment of silence followed as Luna processed all the new information. Then, to the surprise of both adults, she slid off her chair, walked up to Peter, and looked at him with almost comical seriousness. Can I call you Daddy? Now Peter couldn't hold back the tears he'd tried to suppress throughout the conversation. I'd love that, he answered, voice breaking. Without warning, Luna threw her arms around his neck, hugging him with all the strength her little arms could muster. I have a real daddy now, she murmured against his shoulder. Peter wrapped her in his arms, looking over Luna's head at Amanda, who watched the scene with silent tears streaming down her face. There was forgiveness in those eyes, not entirely, perhaps, but there was acceptance. And for now, that was enough. I have something for you, Peter said at last, pulling away gently to get the box he had brought. A gift to mark this special day. Luna opened the package with excitement, revealing a delicate silver necklace with a small whale-shaped pendant. It's beautiful, she exclaimed, admiring how the little whale sparkled in the light. Turn it over, Peter instructed softly. On the back of the pendant were engraved the words, For Luna, with eternal love, Daddy. I ordered it the day I met you, he explained, fastening it around her neck. I hoped I could give it to you someday. Amanda watched the swirl of emotions. It was a scene she never imagined witnessing. Peter Albright, the man she had known as Andrew, who had vanished without a trace, now kneeling before their daughter, placing a necklace that symbolized a commitment to the future. Mommy, look. Luna ran to show the gift, eyes shining. It matches Bluey. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Amanda agreed, affectionately smoothing her daughter's hair. The rest of the morning unfolded in a bubble of new normalcy. Luna, with the typical adaptability of children, accepted the revelation with surprising ease. For her, it seemed to make perfect sense that the man who read books about whales and had her same eyes was her father. The adult complexities, abandonment, lies, lost years, were not part of her understanding of the world. When it finally came time for Peter to leave, there was a new quality in his goodbye. I'll be back the day after tomorrow, as we agreed, he promised, crouching for a final hug. Pinky promise. Luna held out her little finger, now a ritual between them. Pinky promise. Peter linked his finger with hers, then kissed her forehead gently. I love you, little whale. I love you too, Daddy, Luna replied, with the simplicity of someone who had just discovered an obvious truth. When the door closed behind Peter, Amanda sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted, as if she had run a marathon. Luna, on the other hand, was radiant, dancing around the room with the plush whale, telling it all the news about her real daddy. Amanda's phone buzzed with a message from Peter. Thank you for today, for everything. I know we have a long road ahead, but I promise I'll do everything right from now on. For both of you. Amanda contemplated the message for a long moment before replying. One day at a time. That night, as she tucked Luna into bed, Amanda realized that something fundamental had changed. The weight of the secret she had carried for so many years had dissipated, replaced by a new set of challenges. How to build healthy co-parenting with a man she barely knew. How to protect Luna from the inevitable complications of having a billionaire father while living in a small apartment in Inglewood. How to manage her own conflicted feelings toward Peter. Mommy? Luna called sleepily, interrupting her thoughts. Now that I have a daddy, are you happy? Amanda kissed her daughter's forehead, considering carefully her response. I'm happy that you're happy, my love. And yes, I'm happy that your father can finally know you and love you the way you deserve. He seems to like you a lot too, Luna observed with children's disconcerting frankness. He looks at you like the prince looks at the princess in the books. Amanda smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. Time to sleep, little one. We have a lot to talk about tomorrow. When Luna finally fell asleep, Amanda allowed herself to face the truth she had been avoiding. Despite everything, despite the anger and hurt accumulated over 5 years, part of her still responded to Peter Albright. Not the powerful executive, but the man behind the facade, the man who patiently read books about whales, the man who looked at their daughter as if she were the most extraordinary wonder in the universe. It was a disturbing thought, one she would need to examine carefully in the days to come. The end.